We bring back in the Hall of Famer David Aldridge. DA, let's recap here and see what else as you digested this earth-shattering news that Paul George is headed from Indy to OKC.
Well, Jared, the ripple effects are so interesting to look at. As you mentioned, look, the West is loaded now. We saw, after Golden State won the title, there were a lot of people who thought, well, teams are going to kind of keep their powder dry. Nobody's going to go all in. You can't beat the Warriors. Well, look what's happened. Houston gets Chris Paul. Oklahoma City gets Paul George. And we haven't even hit free agency yet, so we don't even know what other players are going to be in play. And Jimmy Butler goes to Minnesota. So all of these teams out West are going, no, we're going to challenge. We're going after them. And I like that because you see Golden State potentially vulnerable, losing some of their depth. We see Andre Iguodala is going to have a meeting with the Spurs. He's going to have a meeting with the Kings tonight. So I'm not saying he's leaving, but he's looking. He's listening. So teams out West are going after. And then in the East, wow. I think all of us believed that Boston was going to do something dramatic in the offseason. Make a big trade, make a big free agent signing, make a trade and a free agent signing. Well, now the guy that everybody kind of had going there, and Paul George, isn't going there, at least not this year. And does that impact Gordon Hayward's decision to go there or not? I think it does a little. And, everybody, well, I should say everybody, a lot of people thought Miami was going to be a player in this anyway, even before tonight. So certainly Miami now has a real shot, I think, at getting Gordon Hayward if he's leaving. So the East is now Cleveland dominant again. But what do these other teams that are kind of on that next level do? What does Boston do? What does Toronto do? Are they going to re-sign Kyle Lowry? They're going to I think they're going to throw a lot of money at him in an hour. What does Washington do? They're going to max out Otto Porter? Or they're going to, they already offered John Wall the big exception. He's going to think about it. What does Miami do in addition to maybe getting Gordon Hayward? What does a team like Milwaukee do that's gave Toronto all it wanted in the first round? So it's fascinating to see everything that happens because of one trade.
You mentioned the East and really a bit of confusion now. And how about the fact that two teams are operating without the person who will be their leader of their front office this upcoming season? Cleveland's got
right.
their assistant general manager, and is it him or Dan Gilbert fielding calls or making decisions? And what about the Knicks, who Steve Mills has been the GM, but the next guy may have a very
right.
different philosophy than Steve Mills?
Well, I will say this from Cleveland's standpoint. Look, their assistant GM, very highly regarded around the league, so they're okay. But to your point, it's fair. Long term, somebody's got to have a vision, whoever they bring in. How are you going to keep LeBron James? That's the only question that matters for the next GM of the Cavaliers. How are you going to keep LeBron James? So they have to get that done quickly, Now, Chauncey Billups, who we all like and we all respect, he's got a tough decision. But at some point soon, it's July 1 now. Somebody's got to make a decision about whether they're going to have Chauncey there or they're going to get somebody else. And the Knicks, same thing. Now, I think the Knicks are in a little bit better position because I think Steve Mills is very compatible with Dolan in terms of ownership and what they want. I don't think there's a lot of difference there. So whatever the Knicks do, I don't think there's going to be a lot of pullback if they bring somebody else in to run the show. I think Steve Mills may wind up having final say on personnel going forward. But it's a fair question. Certainly with Cleveland, who's going to be making the calls here?
Is it fair also to wonder if teams who were starting to plot and plan to at least make a pitch to LeBron next summer, if they are affected or at all thinking differently tonight after Paul George goes to OKC than they would coming into the night?
I think it depends on what else the Cavs do this offseason. Do they trade Kevin Love now or do they keep him? They don't need that bushel of picks and players they were trying to get from other teams, perhaps to offer to Indiana for Paul George. So now do you keep Kevin Love? And, if Cleveland does nothing, they're going to be the prohibitive favorite again next year in the East, as long as they keep the existing team together. That's going to be, I think, the main thing is what do the Cavaliers do to improve their roster this offseason? Because if they improve the roster, I think that helps them in potentially keeping LeBron James. But if they stand pat, I don't know. I think that doesn't help them in terms of keeping LeBron James long term. So that's the big shoe that has to drop yet.
If there's more big shoes, then this is unbelievable what's happening here. We haven't even gotten to what was a pretty significant trade that happened, around 6 Eastern today, and that is Tom Thibodeau making another move. Ricky Rubio sent to Utah. And now this does a couple of things, right? This may help Utah recruit Gordon Hayward, but also from Minnesota's standpoint, now they got money to go out and get a point guard.
They certainly do, Jared, and they've got all kinds of money to go get a point guard. Now, I do think most people believe around the league now that they are going to sign George Teague. Now, the number I've heard is 3 years, $55 million. Okay. If that's what they've decided on. If that is the case and that door is closed, then I think that's a big help to Toronto keeping Kyle Lowry. Now, they were going to go all in to keep Lowry anyway, but now it becomes that much easier because I do think Minnesota was the chief team, the chief threat to signing Kyle Lowry. I suppose it's possible that New York could still make a play there, but my guess is that it's a lot closer for Toronto now that Minnesota door appears to be closed. The question I have is what happens now with George Hill? Because clearly he's not going to re-sign in Utah now. So does New York make a play for him? I had heard that they were very much interested in George Hill for a while, but then the Phil Jackson thing happened and that kind of went away. So now what do you do going forward? Is it Indiana now making a play for George Hill? Who they drafted, remember, initially, and before he got traded? Or is there another team? You know, there will be teams in the East, I think, going after George Hill, but that's the other domino that falls as a result of that trade happening with Ricky Rubio going out. And to Utah's point, to your question, does that help them with Gordon Hayward? Well, it saves them some money. It was going to cost them a lot of money to get to re-sign George Hill, probably more than what Rubio's making this year. So whether that money is used to try and keep Gordon Hayward, and I don't think it will because they can only offer what they can offer, which is the max, or maybe potentially Joe Ingles, who's a restricted free agent as well, it helps them in some regards with that, but I still think they're very concerned about Gordon Hayward leaving.